I definitely don't want to stray away from that. So blessed are the bereaved, for they shall be invited back.
That's good. That's right. Good.
So definitely, we want to definitely be invited back to more breakfast. And so, really, for this morning, guys, it's very informal, nothing structured. It's just brothers talking amongst each other. And so, I don't want to make it stiff. You know, so if you have something that's burning in your lip that you want to talk about, that you want to add, we would definitely address those issues in a timely fashion. But on this morning, as I was coming in, I saw we had some brothers with some real nice vehicles outside. You know, some of them got the tinted windows, some of them got the rims on. You know, some of you guys probably put that premium, what is it, 93 inside your vehicles. Getting the premium oil changes, getting your tires rotated and all that good stuff. You know, so it's interesting how we can get our vehicles that 27-point inspection. But when we talk about our own health, we have a tendency to neglect that. And so we even sometimes put hand wash our vehicles. We don't even bring the Dawn, you know. And so I'm not a mechanic, but I know it's some brothers in here that's real knowledgeable of vehicles and whatnot. And so I think in the vehicle there's what they call a wear indicator. And so when you get to a stop sign or a traffic light, you might hear like a little squeak. And normally with that squeak, you know, it may be an indication that maybe something with your brake system is wearing down or is failing. In essence, we like to call it early detection. And so normally with that, you know, it's telling you that you need to do something. Now, if you don't take heed to that, and like most of us, we may just say, man, I can get by, live it probably, you know, 10, 20 more thousand miles, whatever, I ain't got to address that, or that's the humidity, or whatever the case may be. But sometimes, when it finally starts breaking down, that squeak turns into a grind. And then instead of having just your pads and your shoes that you need to change, you probably need to do what your rotors and your calipers.
Right.
So I don't know if I said that right.
You on track?
For my mechanics out there, y'all know what I'm talking about. You know, so let's turn that thing around. You know, early detection is something that we must take heed on. And really, if we don't take care of the squeaking noise on the pads and shoes, when it comes down to rotors and calipers, you're talking about a real costly project. You know, which can sometimes damage the vehicle permanently. And so when we talk about our body, which is our vehicle, the early detection signs are things that we need to take heed and really make sure that we address. And so this morning we're just gonna talk about a few things to where if we treat them early, we can definitely prevent some very serious damage to our bodies. You know, so there's several different surveys and statistics that show that men definitely are very negligent in regards to the care of themselves. We are typical people who care for others. We strong, we macho, we don't like for nobody to know that nothing's wrong. But with that being said, normally when something does happen, sometimes it's too late or it's too severe for us to really be able to bounce back. So just, you know, as we're speaking, what do you guys feel are some of the reasons why men don't necessarily go for their normal checkups and exams? Anybody? Fear? Yes, sir. Anybody else? Right. Definitely.
Busy.
Time. Yeah.
Awesome.
Sometimes we feel we can't afford it.
Awesome. So all those, when you research them, are all valid answers and valid reasons as to why we neglect our care. Sometimes we don't have the insurance, so we don't have the time. Or maybe we've been burned in the past saying, well, you know what, the doctor did this to my cousin and I don't really trust him. You know? So we know we have a faith in the barber because in turn we're gonna get a cut from the barber. We have faith in the dentist because we know we're gonna get our teeth cleaned. But when I go to the doctor, he's just gonna give me some tests. And I'm not getting nothing back in return. I don't have time for that. Or my insurance plan don't cover that, so I'm not going for that. So there's a ton of different reasons why we put ourselves on the back burner, but I'm here to tell you that we need to start taking more pride and better care of ourselves. And so a few diagnoses that early detection is very important to take heed to, colon cancer and prostate cancer. Yes. In African American men, these two diseases really run rapid in our population. So in essence, I like to use the term that 40 is the new 50. 50 used to be the milestone for a lot of these different things that we would get checked on. We wouldn't have to necessarily worry about the digital rectal exam until we're 50. But we're finding that we're starting to see some of the signs of cancer in men even in their early 40s, sometimes even in the 30s. And so with prostate cancer, there are two different exams that you can kind of have done. One is a PSA, which is a prostate-specific antigen. This is a blood exam that you can do. And normally when you do it, it can be run in with your normal routine, annual checkup lab work. And then there's a digital rectal exam. And this is the one where all the brothers start getting all panicked. They see the glove, he come in with the glove, But I'm here to tell you that those few minutes of embarrassment, discomfort, pressure, whatever you want to call it, can turn into a lifetime of bliss.
That's right.
Because we have to get those things checked out. And, honestly, one of the other reasons why men tend not to come and get checked out is because they feel like we're going to see something that we ain't never seen before. If you're a healthcare provider, unless you got 5 legs underneath your pants or something like that, we've probably seen it before. And it's our job to make sure that we don't put you in a situation where you feel embarrassed and don't want to seek healthcare. And so everything is confidential. Nobody's talking about you in the back room. But that digital rectal exam is important because you can actually really, really feel the prostate very well behind or in front of the recti. With those tests, if there is some abnormality, then sometimes a biopsy is considered if there is more work that needs to be looked into. With the colonoscopy, age 50 was the mile marker, but we're seeing that if you guys are coming in your 40s, it's really, really good. And essentially what we're talking about now is not necessarily the fact that you know that something's wrong or you feel that something's wrong. In essence, we need to try to get a baseline evaluation for you guys. And I use my father as an example because he's one that's very negligent in regards to not wanting to get things done. If he has some type of issue that's going on, I don't want to do the MRI, or I don't want to do the CAT scan. And as you progress in your later years, when things start going on, if we can do a baseline exam, then if it's something that occurred within the last 3 to 5 years, we can kind of pinpoint what is going on in that process. Where was the growth? Where was the mass? Where was this? Where was that? Because we're getting our checks done. And so even if you don't necessarily feel like there's something going on, if your doctor does suggest this, let's do this just so we can get a baseline evaluation. You may be 50 years old now, but age 55, you're starting to feel funny. If I have a CAT scan to refer to from 5 years back, I maybe can pinpoint that the growth was in this part of the colon versus, just some random place and I'm starting from scratch. And so with that colonoscopy, it's a camera on the end of a scope, and it basically puts you to sleep in conscious sedation, so you don't feel a thing. And most times you don't remember a thing.
You got to go now.
Yeah. No, sir. No, sir.
Yeah.
But you don't feel a thing.
I'll testify to that part.
Well, y'all know better than me. But
It's not as bad as, I'm 55.
Yes, sir.
So I had to have mine at 50.
Right.
It's not as bad as you anticipated, but it looks for polyps. You have polyps inside your colon, and you can have, they get a chest to see if it's cancer or not.
Right.
So it's much better for you to go through that hour, 2 hours of getting examined.
Yes, sir.
And you have to walk around with a bag on you.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So you have to get half of your colon taken out.
Right, exactly.
See, because what we don't know is that for American is that you have a large intestine and you have a small intestine. And a lot of times your bowel movement don't pass.
Right.
Like it's supposed to.
Exactly.
And all the different things that we eat that we feel is okay. You understand what I'm saying? Because all of us have cancer in our bodies. But you have to have that which fight. And while it's not pushing like our bowel cavity, that's what causes problems inside of us. So I encourage that, even because if your annual tells you, your annual checkup will catch all of it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Now, they recommended 50 do go have a colonoscopy.
Right.
It's not as bad as you think to have cancer.
Exactly,
Cancer is a
exactly.
terrible creature.
Yeah, I appreciate that, brother.
Yeah, you
And
know.
so not only with the cancer is there what you're checking for, but there's also, like you said, the polyps, ulcers. Sometimes there's even blockages within your gut that may be causing you issues. There's also a diagnosis called anastomosis, to where sometimes there's a twisting
Yeah.
of the gut and things have to be unraveled. And so having a colonoscopy can really unveil a lot of different issues. And so with the prostate screening and with the colonoscopy, you guys need to just make sure that you're taking the early signs to get things checked out. Now, heart disease. Heart disease is another thing that's very popular, especially here in Southwest Louisiana. We have a tendency to really eat very well, as we did this morning. You know, and sometimes the things that we eat are a lot worse on our bodies than they are on our stomachs and our tongues. And so we definitely have to make sure that we are taking heed to our heart health. Now, making sure your blood pressure is in check, your cholesterol and all those other things are very, very important. And so when you do your annual checkups, normally your doctor will run a lipid panel to where you can check your HDL and LDL, triglycerides and things like that. But there's also something called a heart scan. And it's something that's not covered by your insurance, but it's a $75 charge. And essentially what it is a CAT scan of your heart. What this does is it reveals calcified plaques within your coronary arteries. And so normally it is a 10-year detection of the potential for a myocardial infarction, which is also a heart attack. And so if you have a pinpoint look to where maybe I might be at risk of catching a heart attack 10 years from now, you'd like to know that. You know, so if there's different lifestyle changes that you need to take to reduce your cholesterol, to change your diet, to increase your exercise, these tests can really reveal that, so that way you can make the necessary lifestyle changes, so that way you don't suffer from a stroke or some type of heart attack. And so $75, painless procedure, a little bit of radiation exposure, but not much. And your doctor, you don't necessarily have to have a prescription to get that done. And after we finish, I have some packets of information for you guys, so that way you can look at the different mile markers as far as your screening and some of the information and how you can get in contact with someone to help you with these procedures if you so choose.
Hey, I want to go back to the prostate. In this area right here, because I go to my urologist at great doctor. What it is that we have a low testosterone, which causes problems also in your prostate.
Right.
And I didn't know that, but it's big in this area amongst Afro-Americans and in the Caucasian race.
Right.
Because a lot of us are going there, because I get the testosterone shots, because your T begins to drop.
Right.
You see, and that creates problems also, mainly for your prostate. I didn't know that until he told, my doctor started explaining it to me. He said it's worse among Afro-Americans, that we suffer we're more likely to get prostate cancer than any other race.
Right.
That, he explained that too. He said the thing about it is that we have to take preventive measures, in order, to go, because your testosterone, as you age, it drops. You do like, I'm a beast or whatever, nickname it how you want. I got it going on there like that. And even in younger men, you don't have to be old, you can be younger. Younger men that I've seen go in there, they're low T are dropping. And it's bad. And I'm telling you, what he's telling me, because that affects all your lower extremities.
Right.
That's the thing about everything that you do. He said that's what happens. And he said because we don't do that. He said that's why we're more likely, at least 95% at a higher level for Africa to get prostate cancer than any other race.
Right. The testosterone levels definitely play a huge part in that. And towards the end of the presentation, at the end of the day, a lot of the things that we deal with, it all kind of comes back to what we put in our bodies. I know I joked around with you guys about the premium gas and 87 versus 93, but the cliche used to be you are what you eat. The things that you put in your body have a great deal to do with how your body will work and how it will operate. And so we had great grits, we had great biscuits, all those good things, but incorporating a well-balanced amount of fruits and vegetables, making sure that we moderate the amount of carbohydrates that we take in, that we get adequate rest, which which is the next part that I'm gonna present about adequate rest and making sure that we're not doing too much damage to our bodies. That is really what, in essence, the entire presentation is about. But going back to this, sleep deprivation can sometimes be just as detrimental as alcohol intoxication. You know, there's sometimes people who, whether you work shift work, or you just been living a wild life, sometimes, man, you're so tired, you might be swerving on the road and they think that you're drunk, you just haven't had no sleep. You know, and so having adequate rest is just as important as having a well-balanced diet. Now, for some of us, we may not necessarily be aware of it, but if you've been a shift worker, if you sleep and you snore vigorously, or your significant other is talking about you need to go sleep in the other room, you may suffer from what's called obstructive sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is something that a lot of men are in denial about because, you know, no, not me. You know, and I know, and I'm speaking from experience because my wife would tell me, man, you snore so loud, I have to get up. You know, and not me. I was good, man. You know, and then sometimes they'll hit you with that record. Yeah. That's the advocate. But realistically, you find that you are having those periods throughout the day where you feel a lot more tired. You may be, while pastors preaching, start to hit that nod like this, and I'm guilty of doing that. Not here. But previously, you know, you would just find that you really tired, and you would sleep with your mouth open, or you had dry mouth or something like that whenever you rest, and you didn't necessarily get the best quality of sleep that you could get. And so it took for my doctor to send me in for a sleep study. And they put you with all these different electrodes and stuff over your body, and essentially they just watch you sleep over maybe a 6 to 8 hour period. But what they do is they monitor your oxygen levels, your heart rate, the restless leg, all those different things to see if you have some type of sleep disorder. And they even see how often you wake yourself up in the midst of that sleep, because you never hit what's called REM sleep. You never sleeping like a baby because you're always waking yourself up in the midst of that. And so I'm here to tell you guys that if you do struggle with those things, and most of the time the characteristics of that is that you kind of build kind of chunky, you got a thick neck, what most of us do. Yeah. You know, you may suffer from that. And having your airway obstructed is not a good thing. As it sounds, your airway being obstructed means that you're not getting the air that you need for proper air-gas exchange, which puts more pressure on your heart, which puts more pressure on all your other organs, which could potentially be detrimental to your health. And so, if that is something that you struggle with, by all means, get checked out, see if there's a sleep study that needs to be conducted. It may just be the fact that your tonsils need to be taken out, because that's an airway obstructor as well, but you never really know until you actually look into those things. And so, as I get ready to close, some of the things that I wanted to share with you guys aren't necessarily things with a diagnosis per se, but women do a good job of taking care of some things, and there's some things that women do that are more popular with women than they are with men. But I'm here to tell you that things like yoga and manicures and pedicures are just as essential to your health as getting yourself checked out. Recently, I've been involved with a class at our Chris's Health Club, which is called Body Flow. And it's a combination of yoga, Pilates, and Tai Chi. And so this, or the benefits of this is that men oftentimes want to lift weights and throw up the gym and power clean and press and deadlift and all those different things. But some of us can't even handle the weight that we're carrying every day. You know, they having trouble tying their shoes just to bend down. Or my hammies hurt, or my ankles have pressure on them, this and that, whatever. And so when you're able to balance your core and learn how to handle different things, you're able to meditate and relax and see different things that you weren't able to see before. And so I challenge you guys to not necessarily look at yoga and all these things as a feminist type thing. You know, there's a lot of benefits within that, of course, the relaxation, but also the increase in your circulation. As we talking with brothers, it increases your stamina and your benefits within your intimate life.
We'll sign up at that.
something that when you go, you may be the only guy in there. But you know what I'm saying? The fact that I can touch my toes, or I can bend, or I can flex. If you've ever worked a job to where you sit down, sometimes men complain of sciatica, to where you feel you get this nerve pain or this back pain, and it's nothing to play with. Because when your back is hurting and your nerves giving you problems, it'll bring you down to your knees. But because you're able to be limber, not necessarily to be able to throw up the gym, but you can stretch and you can handle the weight that you carry on a day-to-day basis, that's really what the long-term health is all about. And so, in essence, when we talk about manicures and pedicures, you'll go to the shop, and there's nothing but the ladies in there getting the shellac and the long and the claws and all these different things. But I had a lady tell me one time when I was working at Stage in retail, and I shook her hand. I was trying to sell a Red Door, White Diamonds, one of them Elizabeth Arden fragrances. And she said, "Man, you dress to the nines, but your hands ashy." And you know, and to a certain degree, I said, "Well, I thought that's what the ladies like. They like that rough, you know." But when they shake your hand, they checking you out.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so I kind of blame it on the fact that I wash dishes a lot. My mama had me wash dishes. You know? But when you shake hands with somebody, especially a woman, or you meet somebody for the first time, your nail care and the smoothness or whatever in your hands is very important. And long term, not necessarily the impression that you make on somebody, these things are very important to your health. The fungus that can get under your nails, or some of us that do different work outside, or even the yard work that we do, things can kind of get trapped, fungus, bacteria, and things like get trapped underneath our nail beds that we don't even know. The importance of using Germ-X is big because even though we wash our hands, we not end up doing the surgery wash, scrubbing this and that. Foot care is very, very important. And I know sometimes we feel embarrassed because we got man feet. And I know we all got it. You go to the shop and get it done, they bring out the cheese grate. Like, you know what I'm saying? And they talking it around. But you know, after it's done, man, you be feeling good because them things feel good on the back. You know? But when we talk about diabetes, which is very prevalent in the African American community, your feet are normally the first things that you really, really need to take control of. And I'm glad that we got some young guys in here because as athletes, sometimes we forget that we just got out there messing around in the yard, or we played a pickup game, or we had practice, but we're not taking care of our feet. You gotta make sure you clean them things, dry them off appropriately, put the right socks on, and keep it going. I know as a young guy, I struggled with athlete's foot. And so it used to be that tough acting to knack, and you had to get that, put that on there, make sure it was good. Because if not, man, your feet itching, and you potentially get, you know, funguses, smells, and all those different things. So as a youngster, you gotta make sure that you're looking out for your feet, you know? And so I'm here to tell you that yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi, whatever it is not just a thing for ladies. Getting a manicure, pedicure is not just a thing for ladies. Now, you might see the ladies in there, but we gotta be one step ahead of these ladies. And sometimes we got more play with the ladies because we'll do some things that the ladies do. You know, you gotta be out there you gotta dare to be different, I guess, so to speak. And so, I'm here to tell you, a lot of the things that we talked about definitely go back to diet and exercise. You know, making sure that you not being, what's the word, a glutton, I guess. You know, eat what you need to eat. And I think as you start to refine your diet plan, you'll find that sometimes us as folks eat because it's there. When you do a certain amount of fasting, or you actually stick to a certain type of diet, you'll realize when you're eating when you're hungry and when you're eating just to stuff your face. You know, and so as I close, there's packets that we prepared with that Krista's prepared on our behalf with the information and the literature about things that we talked about today, how you can access some of the tests and navigation to be able to get some of those exams done. So I encourage you guys to pick up a packet. But if there's any questions that y'all have, I'll be more than happy to answer anything and everything that you might have questions about. Yes, sir.
The most important thing, though, you know, they need to have a primary physician.
Yes.
And take annual checkup, because normally the insurance will pay for, most insurance will pay for a preventive program. They offer, and that's when they first catch it. Like I said, there's a baseline. You have a baseline. You don't wait, but we as men don't wanna go to the doctor and have a primary. I was forced to, cause, the company that I worked for, looked years ago and insurance was just, insurance, medical was just going out of sight. So they made us get a primary doctor that we go to every year in the program.
A lot of employees are starting to kind of understand the game, because they know that healthy employees mean that we can continue that throughput, we can continue, doing what we need to do. So they've actually subcontracted other agencies to come in and do wellness screenings on their associates. I know we just had one at Christus to where it's like they entice you, we'll give you a $50 Target gift card if you come in, have your panel done, this and that, whatever. And so the associates are like, yeah, I'm gonna get that thing, man, I know I'm good. You know, but sometimes they find that there are things within their lipid panel or whatever else that they have wrong, and that's the avenue that they have to take to be able to see what's going on with the employees. And so, yes, what Brother Bali said is 100% accurate, because a lot of the preventative things are covered at 100% by your medical insurance. But it takes for you to actually get off your tail and go get that done, because like you said, you don't have time, you don't have money, well, you don't have to pay that.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
I think most of us are afraid.
Right.
That's why we don't.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You know, and that's another one of the reasons why we don't go and get checked out. But I think at the end of the day, when we think about our families and the people that depend on us, you know, we owe it to the people that depend on us to go and get those results. Yes, sir.
And honestly, I go up here with my wife.
Right.
It's gotta be.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Brother Moore.
Yeah, I just wanted to say about sleep apnea. You know, a lot of people don't know that sleep apnea is actually really taking a lot of people out.
Right.
And they don't know that they really even have sleep apnea.
Yes, sir.
You could be sleep for 8-10 hours a day and still wake up tired because you're not breathing like you're supposed to be breathing.
Right.
And I got diagnosed with sleep apnea like many years ago. And it's, you know, like you say, you could be snoring and my wife be like, man, you gasping from your breath. You know, it's a
Right,
mechanism inside of you that make you cough to kind of wake you up a little bit.
Yeah.
And you know, and everybody, I think everybody, you know, watch football or whatever. That's what Reggie White died of.
Right.
Sleep apnea. And you know, and it's more people that you don't know.
Yeah.
So that's an important thing.
I do some work with the coroner's office here in town, and you know, it's very difficult sometimes to see that you are taking somebody, pronouncing somebody, because of something, you know, like that. You know, I know no death it should be weighed, you know, one end or the other, but when it's things that young men are being taken out for, and we could have prevented it, it really hits you to where you definitely want to take heed and not make some of the same mistakes that other people made. You know, I'm not embarrassed to say that, yeah, I had to do that. And now, man, that machine, I don't go nowhere without that machine. You know, now my wife makes sure I don't go nowhere with that machine. You know, but it's to the point to where, man, if we taking a flight, dog, that's my carry-on. It ain't leaving, because I can't afford for this to get lost somewhere. And to the point to where PSA, TSA, whatever, they like running that thing through the machine, like, what is this? What is this? I said, man, I gotta have it. You know, so I mean, the thing is, it's not something to be ashamed of. And yeah, it's not that attractive when you put that thing on in the bed, but you know, she loves it because you ain't making no noise. So, yes, sir.
One more thing I want to let know that I talked to my doctor about is our family history.
Right.
Like my dad suffered with diabetes. That's when he died, and my mother has high blood pressure. So I talked to my doctor about it, and you know, why do I have? I take a low dose high blood pressure medicine. I'm borderline diabetic. He told me that you drop 2 points, and like he said, it's hereditary. He said it's good to know your family history. And I was just telling Pastor Campbell, he ordered me. He said, if you want to live here, if you want to be on taking diabetic medicine, you want to get on, he said it's mandatory that you go exercise. It's mandatory that you go to mandatory to change your eating habits. And I thank God for that, you know, because I lost 8 pounds, you know, by doing it, because I don't want to be on no diabetic, because I know how diabetes is when it gets to my dad. So not only to check our family history,
African Americans, I mean, it's not gonna be too many of us that's not gonna be able to take their family history somewhere down the road.
Right.
You know, and even if it's not a family history, if we live in a reckless lifestyle as far as the foods that we eat, and even if it's not in your family history, you right there. You know, so, yes, sir.
You know, at the age of probably 35, I went to the doctor, and my blood pressure had went up. And he did tell me, he said, if you come in here one more time with your blood pressure that high, he said, I'm gonna have to put you on pills. So going back to what he was saying, I changed the way I eat. Okay, I changed the entire way I ate, and I started an exercise program. I went back 3 months later, and he asked me, man, what did you do? Because my blood pressure went back to normal. And I told him, he said, whatever you're doing, just keep doing.
Right.
Sometimes just making a change in your lifestyle does great for your health.
Right. One of the things too that just really just bring up to you guys, sodium is like one of the biggest culprits that has our blood pressure where it is. You know, so some of the things that we eat, especially here in the South, that good old jalapeno pepper jack smoked sausage that they got at Market, you know, it is good, but you know the sodium intake is something that will definitely play with your blood pressure. So we have to make sure that we're cleansing out our systems and making sure that we're drinking an adequate amount of water, reducing our sodium intake. And then one of the other things too that I want to make sure that we pinpoint, because I'm looking at the brothers, if you're going for your checkup and you're getting your blood pressure taken, make sure that they're using the proper size cup. Because when you have big arms and they're using a small cup, the reading's gonna naturally be higher. And so if you got guns and they're not using the right material, right equipment to take those assessments, then it will give a false reading. You know, so there's some brothers out here that think their blood pressure high, but they really good. Now maybe that's a good thing because they're taking precautions. You know, but at the same time, make sure that when you go to the doctor, that your blood pressure is being taken with the proper.
You're right.
Yes, sir.
2 weeks ago, I went to Walmart faithfully. I was 184 with 99. I went straight to the hospital. And that wasn't even true. That wasn't even right. I got scared. I spent that video. I said, man.
You recognize the number. To the average Joe, 199 was that.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, knowing what range you should fall in.
I Googled it. I said, man, this ain't right.
120 over 80.
And today in the package, you'll see that there's a packet that includes blood pressure. And so you guys will see that. I hate that we didn't get them to you so that way you can see that, but there's literature that I have for all of men here today. So that way you can really look into some of those things that you may have questions about. Yes, sir.
Which one is the better one to take when you're doing like the I guess PSA and which one is more accurate?
The PSA is normally one that's done, especially for men that's on the lower side of before 50. They normally try to do the PSA without having to do the digital rectal. Now, if you're 70 and above, typically they don't do a PSA. They just go straight to the digital rectal just to make sure they can actually assess for not only just the prostate cancer, but any other type of blood in the bottom of the rectum, masses and other things like that may be more on the lower GI tract. But the PSA is good because actually some of us, whether we know it or not, if you're going for your annual checkup, you've probably had a PSA done already. So even getting it done as early as now is good, and the doctors are just normally looking at it. You should normally fall within normal range as a young fella, but if there's ever something that kind of triggers that to be abnormal for some reason, then that'll lead towards the digital rectal exam. And with the digital rectal, if they assess that there's an abnormality, then they may look to do some type of biopsy to test the tissue to see if there's like something cancerous or whatever. Yes, sir.
Yeah, in my case, my dad had prostate cancer, and he ended up, because he had surgery, I think he was like 60 years old, maybe 59, and he died at 89. So they took care of everything, and he recovered from it. And I have an enlarged prostate, so I have PSAs done every 6 months, and also do rectal like once a year or so. At one time, you sort of talk about being embarrassed about it. Well, my doctor had a little intern working with, I mean, she was fresh out of med school, a young girl. And I think she was more embarrassed than I was, because I mean, I'm looking after my health, because I know that a lot of African American men die from prostate cancer. And it's such an easy cure. You know, there are guys in this room right now that's been through that type of surgery. So it's like Brother Gerber says, it's more fear of what you might find. But the thing about it, just think you'll live longer if you find it and take care of it while it's in the infancy stage. You know, so, don't be embarrassed.
I'm one of those guys that have had that surgery, and one of the things that really stood out at me, you were talking earlier about warning signs, and that like the sensor on your brain.
Right.
But the doctor told me that I could have gone for the next 8 to 10 years and never knew I had it.
Right.
And that when I started feeling it, then it would be too late. I mean, it would be so far down the road that the radiation, and they could do it, but it would be too late.
Exactly.
And so that's why I think it's important to do what you were saying, just do your act. I think, man, not only for that, I've talked to several guys at this church since then, and they were saying, oh man, I ain't been to the doctor, I ain't been to the doctor. I said, son, so always my advice is go to the doctor, get your checks, get your screening.
Exactly.
Because without that screening, I would never have known that I had prostate cancer.
Yes, sir. Yes, Brother Mark.
What should you ask your doctor when you go in there? And how do you guys, the doctors, nurses and stuff, feel about like other alternatives, like, you know, natural remedies for like prostate cancer or whatever, you know, different things that people try to do, herbal or something like that.
Right. As far as what to ask your physician, typically you're asking your physician because you notice something. And I know what Brother Smith said, but with prostate, sometimes there's the difficulty of being able to empty when you urinate. Sometimes it's the pressure, maybe feeling like your prostate is enlarged. Sometimes the frequency or the urgency when you urinate is more than what it used to be. You know, and so you're going in maybe asking those questions because you feel that there's maybe something that's wrong. You don't necessarily know, but those are some of the key things in the beginning to where maybe my prostate might be giving me a little bit of trouble. Now, as far as the remedies and things, I think as a healthcare provider, we are very open-minded in regards to the different ways that things can be cured nowadays. You know, as far as herbal and holistic views, everything doesn't always have to be radiation, chemotherapy, and surgery. But in some cases, those are the most aggressive ways to be able to treat and to remedy things very quickly. There's some studies that say having a holistic diet, making sure you're putting in whole foods, grass-fed beef, all these different things can actually turn some things and reduce your risk for cancer. But sometimes when we live in this day's economy, it's cheaper to get bar S bologna than grass-fed beef. And we gotta do what we gotta do to make sure things work. But at the same time, you know, you have to make sure that you know, you're looking at things from an open-minded perspective. And I know that there's been times, because I've also worked in the hospice field, to where there's things that's not pharmaceutical that will take care of a patient a lot better than what medicine will provide. You know, and you know, just because not necessarily just because we're in church, but you know, there's a medicine that God has for us that's not necessarily radiation, chemotherapy, and all that good stuff. So as long as you believe and you have faith in what you're doing and faith in Him, then I feel as though whatever route you take, you know, everything's gonna be all right.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
You know, I'm diabetic. I was diabetic where I took a lot of like shots and stuff like that. And so, you know, I heard people all the time about like going to the doctor. You know, I got up to one time I was like 340, okay? And I just made it, you know, like, okay, now we're like 260. I've been as low as like 240. But the the issue is like, you don't wanna go to the doctor and be going to the doctor all the time, because when I was 340, I had to go and do those checks, it was like every 2 months. I need you back here every 2 months. Now, as I lost weight, and I ate, and I like fruit, vegetables and stuff, but I eat pretty much healthy. Now when I go in, it's like, okay, I'll see you in 6 months, or I'll see you in 7 months. So if you don't wanna go to the doctor, get up, exercise, eat healthy, and that'll keep you out of the doctor's office. Because when I was overweight, I'm still overweight, when I was really overweight, I had to go to the doctor all the time because I wouldn't eat healthy, I wouldn't exercise regularly, and now, I get up at 3:45 in the morning and go work out. And I eat healthy. I eat so many salads, I get tired of them. But that's the whole thing. I had to realize it myself, like after a while, okay, you can stay out of the doctor's office if you just eat healthy and exercise.
I think all of us know what we have to do. It's just a matter of actually doing it.
Yes, sir.
And so I know, just kind of what you talked about, if you've ever gotten out of bed and your ankles and your knees are kind of, you're getting up and you just feel like a little bit, that might mean you got too much weight on them joints. Especially as you start to age, those knees and those ankles and those hips, they get tired of carrying that weight. And you understand, like, man, how much life and spunk you have after you lose about 10, 12 pounds. 10 to 20 pounds. Now I'm moving a little bit more. Now I'm dancing better than I used to.
Yeah, man.
Things like that. I think it wasn't a point. It might have been a point in time when I couldn't rock or couldn't march in like Brother Joe was marching in. Because he got that wiggle. I'm excited to see that. Man, I'm telling you, he's out there. Y'all gonna see this man tomorrow. He gonna come down the aisle. But definitely like what you said, man. And what's crazy is the carbohydrates play a big part in that. And we clown it because Dave Chappelle had a skit that he used to call it the ice. They used to call it. But man, when you eat that big plate of food, man, it's like, man, I'm ready to go to bed.
Yeah.
You put a certain amount of rice and bread and stuff in your system, and you just feel tired. But if you really moderate how much of that stuff you put in your body, you feel that you got so much energy to where you're ready to kind of get out there. And one last thing on diet and exercise, when you see all the different fruits that the grocery store has to offer, don't just stick with the strawberries because that's what you like. Don't just stick with the bananas, this and that, whatever. Right. The color within your fruits and vegetables offers a different ton of different minerals and vitamins. And so try to mix it up. If you never had blackberries before, man, try it. Blueberries, raspberries, all those different things. Now they are a little bit more expensive, but in essence, your health is much more important than the few $4 or $5 that it might cost to get a different type of berry or fruit. Yes, sir.
I was looking at this health food thing, and it's amazing how God is. And they had foods that was good for different specific organs. And like the kidney bean. But the bean was good for the kidney. And when you looked at that bean, it looked like the kidney. And then they had carrots that's good for the eye. You cut the carrot, and it looks like an eye. And so I don't know, God is something. And so it's out there.
Preach, Reverend.
We just got to be able to figure it out. And you think about before there were hospitals, people figured it out. They knew what was healthy to eat. They didn't always run to the doctor to get that medicine out of the pharmaceutical. They went to God's place, and they found it. And those was just two examples.
Right.
You go all the way down through it, and for the liver and for the heart, and these things look like the things that they are good for.
Right.
So God is something.
And it is important that you made that point because you talked about the heart and all those things. One of the things the textbooks will tell you, the liver, the meat itself, liver, is probably the best thing for you. Now, it don't taste good to me.
It's good to me.
You know, but
It's the onion stone on
that
top.
meat, the liver itself is probably one of the best things that you can eat that's good for your body. And in essence, liver has live in it. You know, so it's just, you know, one of those things to where I'm glad you made that point, because I don't like liver. And I don't normally eat nobody liver. But maybe I need to start changing. Yes, Brother Moore.
Yeah, this right here is personal to me, and maybe you can point me in the right way or something. Ever since I've stopped working, you know, now I don't have no insurance, but I got all kind of, you know, diabetic, high blood pressure, and you know, you can't, you know, the doctor's not trying to give you any refills or whatever, this and that.
Right.
You know, but you know, the thing is, you know, I can't really afford to go to the doctor and stuff right now, because just blood tests, you might be $600-700, and you know, that keeps me away from, you know, going to the doctors. I mean, is it anything that, you know, that maybe, you know, if I go to one of these places or something that,
I think one of the things to add to that, and Brother McKinney talked about it earlier, how, you know, one of our sister churches, brother churches, whatever you call it, doing a health fair.
Right.
You know, and I think, you know, this is kind of like our path to maybe get something like that done here. There's a lot of community resources that not only Southwest Louisiana has, but that are around nationally to be able to help people, whether it's low income or, you know, compromised disability, whatever the case may be. I'll speak about one that I know Christus is involved with. The McNeese Nursing Building normally has some type of walk-in thing that they do, that Dr. Van Snyder and a couple other physicians do at least once or twice a week. And you come in, doctors, nurse practitioners see you. You don't have to have any type of insurance. They will see you, run those exams, give you those prescriptions. Now, the medication sometimes may be at your cost, but then they also give you a prescription card to where it get you almost close to 70-80% off that prescription if you're able to withstand the generic instead of the brand name. And so there's a lot of different avenues that are government, state funded to be able to help people to get the necessary screenings. I just think that you have to make yourself, we have to, as a community, as healthcare providers, make the community conscious of what's out there.
Right.
And then once we bring that information to you, you have to say, you know, I need to take heed to this information and go and seek that. And I think as a healthcare provider, you don't get into this for what somebody can do for you. You know, it's all about what you can do for others. And so I feel passionate that if we get you in the right avenue, we'll be able to definitely take care of whatever you whatever needs to be done. Yes, sir.
One more thing, I wanna stress to brothers too. Stop eating late at night. Stop eating late at night and going to bed. Because your body fights all night long to break that food down.
Right.
If it's past 8 o'clock, tell me don't eat.
Right.
You're gonna toss and turn all night. The weight stays. Yeah, it does. That weight stays. You're not knowing that when you get up in the morning, you think that you're hungry, but you're not. Your body's still fighting to digest that food.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's how you put on weight.
I can definitely testify to that. There is it's a growing trend right now. It's called intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, some people can't necessarily do that because of diabetes and having to take their medicine, having to eat things like that. But what the regimen is that I, with the exception of today, will not normally eat until 12 noon.
That's fine.
Have 2 good quality meals and maybe a good quality snack in between 12 noon and 8 p.m. After 8 p.m., the only thing I'm restricted to is coffee, tea, or water. You know, and so what you do is your body is actually learning to operate off of its stores. You know, and as long as you can, and actually I think there's some biblical variety because I think they did a lot of fasting back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
And with fasting, it actually alleviates a lot of the issues that the body has on its own. You know, the body actually, if you give it an opportunity to it can repair itself. But when we're continuing to do certain damage to our body, then you're having a hard time with the recovery piece. So what the brother said as far as putting certain things in your body after hours, when you're resting, those digestive things aren't running like, when your metabolism is really going. But it's funny, when you can get on the scale after fasting, first thing in the morning, dry weight, no clothes on, you probably lost about 2 or 3 pounds from the previous day. And so if you continue that, and you'll start to see 2 pounds turns into 3 pounds, 3 pounds turns into 5 pounds. And before you know it, you realize how to control your hunger. When you really, because normally at 12 o'clock, I'm ready to get after it. But I need to make sure that I'm not overdoing. And even if I do indulge a bit, I'm able to burn it a little bit faster. And when I cut it off at 8 o'clock, I can see that, I feel better, my gut's a little bit, it's not bloated, it's not full of carbs and whatever else. But
I'm good, I'm okay.
That's my daily, that's my daily, that's my daily routine every day.
Right.
It's not I don't do a cycle on, cycle off, but that's my daily routine is that I don't eat until afternoon.
Yeah.
During the 5 days of the week, that's what I do.
Yeah, my biggest indicator, man, is came Christmas time of 18, and I normally like to dress. You guys might see, I might try to put a pink coat on, something like I had on Sunday.
Yeah.
But when you start to try to button that thing up and you start having trouble, man.
Yeah.
You start having trouble trying to get that thing right. Pocket square ain't sticking like it used to. You know what I'm saying? You gotta do something, cause nice dress clothes cost a lot. And the fresh stuff ain't big and tall, they don't have too much fly stuff in there. So you gotta make a decision, am I gonna be, fly guy, or I'm gonna have to shop over here on this side? And, probably like around Christmas, I really got serious about doing the fasting piece. And since the new year, it's like been 60 pounds that dropped.
Oh, wow.
Just from changing. Just from changing that. And so, it's to the point to where now, man, I'm in the attic, clothes I ain't want to give away.
Yeah.
I'm up there, my wife ain't see me in a minute, I'm up there trying clothes. I'm like, why, this and that, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Because, you feel good about yourself and your appearance, and you want to, look nice and dress nice and all the different things, but your health is number one. Yes, sir.
But when you talk about skipping meals, and you're trying to lose weight too, don't your body sometimes will go into a storing mode?
With burns the fat.
Yeah, you gotta
Not
eat, but
necessarily.
you gotta eat though, Doc. You gotta eat.
Because when you skip meals, if you train your body to eat, I'm not talking about eating a bunch, but if you train your body to eat on a regular basis, your body will go into burning mode. I mean, that's the way it's designed.
Yeah.
It's designed to go into burning mode, but when you start skipping meals, then it goes back into storing mode.
I think for those of us that do struggle with the obesity piece, not necessarily skipping the meal, but the quality of the meal that we take in is probably the biggest thing.
Yeah.
If I know that I can be diligent enough to make sure that I do adequate portion control, and I do adequate nutrients on each meal 3 times a day at several different parts, and it'd be great. But I know I have a problem to where, hey, my kids and my wife eat certain things that, man, I shouldn't be eating. And so, and it's hard because when you live in a household and everybody else feel like they can eat the pizza, and you can't eat the pizza, but you want the pizza, it is very difficult. And so you have a goal for yourself, but yes, parts of the body, different sums of us have different ways that our metabolism works. And if it's not being cycled the way that it should, it can kind of go into where it's going to store, those carbohydrates for whatever. But when you talk about the fasting piece, like I said, from 12 to 8, normally I miss my breakfast. I normally have a cup of coffee or lemon water or something like that in between beforehand. And lemon water is a natural diuretic, almost similar to Lasix, so it helps to kind of cleanse your system. But I know that my issue is more so with burning the fat, and so I choose to do that. But there's different types of fasting regimens, and so some people choose to do a 24. Some people choose to do a full day fast, and a 5-2 or whatever the case may be. But with a fasting regimen, that's also something that you should also talk to your doctor with as well. Because of the different type of diabetics and things like that, you don't necessarily want to go through with a regimen if it's going to be detrimental to your health. Yes, sir.
what I did, I didn't miss anything. I just switched it. I went to Wilson Festival all day, doing the work, and I eat at 6:30, a real meal. And that's all I did.
Right.
And then, you know, I don't eat fast food. I try to stay away from burgers and fried chicken and all that stuff, but that's bad. So, and it worked for me. Using that process, I lost about 9 pounds.
Yeah, and brother, sometimes I think it's more so listening to your body. You know, if you know that that's not the adequate regimen for your body, then you can't necessarily partake in it.
What I'm saying is, everybody's body is basically built the same way. It's built that if your body knows that if I'm going to get a meal at a certain time, then it's going to burn up. Now, it could be fruits and vegetables like what Jeff was saying, but if my body knows that I'm not going to eat from 8 o'clock at night and I'm not going to get anything else till noon tomorrow, then the metabolism it stops burning and it goes to storage. So if I'm eating a meal, whether it's fruits and vegetables for breakfast or whatever for lunch, if it knows it's going to get that, it pretty much stays in burning mode, and then it makes it easier for you to lose weight that way. But if you skip a period, if you skip a meal, if you go that long without giving your body something to eat, then it stops burning and goes to storage.
Yeah, that's not.
Everybody's body works that way.
But, well, it's not necessarily true for everybody's body. That's why you say you gotta talk to your health professional. So like for me, for instance, for me, that's not how it works. But I do drink, I do take protein during the night, right? So I take protein, this is true, this is true. I do take protein, protein shake, but I don't eat anything till afternoon, and I do that every day, you know? But,
That's the same way.
Right.
I do take protein.
And then late at night, like I said, what I do is.
And I eat good at night time.
What I do is, early in the morning, if I get up, I drink a bottle of water, and I eat a protein bar through that day, but then when you come late at night, like I know I'm not gonna eat anything, what I do is, like, I drink a bottle of water. So my body knows I drink water all day. My body knows that last meal gonna give is a bottle of water, or I might eat a protein bar, and then I'm good.
Right.
You know, when I'm good from that, and it all depends on your body. You know, and I say for me, cause I just said, I'm 55 years old. You understand what I'm saying? You know, and that's the thing about it. You know, I had to learn that. That was something you have to learn. And then I talked to my doctor about it.
Right.
I just didn't jump into it. He told me what I needed to do for my, for my body with my high blood pressure, with me borderline diabetic. My urologist dealing with my prostate and my test. He told me everything. And one thing I'll share the brothers do, don't go to your doctor and don't ask questions. See, a lot of times we don't ask questions, we just go on what the doctor says. That's not how that goes. You don't ask questions, you're not gonna tell.
So let me make one statement before we go. This none has anything to do with what we're talking about now. Elections, talking about affordability of healthcare and all that. Elections have consequences.
Yeah.
We have an election coming up in November. We have one coming up in following November. The one coming up in this November is for the governor. And you know we have a Democratic governor now, and he expanded Medicare. And then, but the challenge, people vote against their own self-interest for whatever reason. So elections have consequences. If we don't vote, y'all, if you think, this medical issue is bad now, if we don't vote, it's gonna be worse, not only in the state, but in the country. So let's go out and vote so that maybe we can get some of these issues that Brother Mark is facing. Because there's no way that in the United States, with all our money and all our wealth, that Brother Brother Mark, I'm sorry, me too, can't go to the doctor and have health care. So let's vote, y'all.
It's not, all right, man, let's go.
Brother, we need to revisit the high blood pressure issue again. A few years ago, we did what we call the Daniel fast. And before we did the Daniel fast, the church's nurses took our blood pressure to see what our blood pressure was.
Baseline.
Well, when it came to my test, the nurse told me that my blood pressure was so high that I should go to the emergency room tonight or see my doctor the first thing in the morning. Well, listen, I've been a hard-working person and a person who exercised rigorously, constantly, and I felt like that should take care of any blood pressure problems I would have. But listen, as people who are from, especially South Louisiana, we love our food well seasoned. And well seasoned usually means we have a lot of sodium or more commonly known salt in our food. And also Asian food has a lot of salt in it too. So if you like to eat a lot of well seasoned food, you're gonna develop high blood pressure. Now, one of the things that I came across that would help your blood pressure go down, help your body get rid of the salt, is to eat two things. One is a lot of bananas, and number two is drink coconut water. If you want to bring your blood pressure down, you do those two things, plus you eat, as they already said, lots of fruit and vegetables. Stop eating a lot of food with salt in it. Good taste is not, good tasting food, right, is just about always associated with food with a lot of salt in it.
And I know we
All right,
can
brother.
close, and brothers, if there's anything that you guys have questions about, I'm here, I'm available for you in whatever capacity that may be. I have resources, I'm connected with several different healthcare organizations to where we can do our best to either have those people come here and spend more time with us, or whatever that looks like. So, brother, whatever it is, my deacons, if there's anything that I can do for the men or for the church of my pilgrim, excuse me, y'all please just let me know. But what I will just kind of segue off of that, y'all research, because a lot of times people eat fried food because of the texture. You won't believe that somebody made fried fish with cornflake batter. It's just crazy because the texture was still the same, but it was tremendously more healthy because it was cornflakes, which gives that cornmeal texture. But it's still, it was a lot more healthy for you.
Wow.
So there's things that we like to indulge in, but there's always healthier options. So I just challenge you guys to research those things.
Questions and answers though.
But listen, this is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Generate conversation. We all talk about that basketball game, man. You see it dunk, did you see that block shot? Now, hey, I had a colonoscopy the other day. That's the kind of things we ought to be talking about. Hey, brother, how you doing? How's it? What's your PSA? When last time you got a check? Start a different conversation. And there's nothing like having fried chicken cooked in hog lard. But without further ado, this is doing exactly what it's supposed to do, generate conversation around men health.
Yeah, so I want to tell everybody reach under your chair. If you got a purple sheet under there, you win one of the door prizes there. Reach under your seat if you find purple.
I like that, man.
But if you got a purple, come on and get a door prize. And listen, if somebody want to talk to somebody after this meeting, get our closing prayer.
Let's close first.
Now let's close with a closing prayer first, then we can talk about it a little bit. Pastor? We also have 2 shirts that's available, and don't forget, brothers, tomorrow we're marching in wearing our black suit, blue shirts. Hey, let's give God all for the praise. Let's give God all for the praise. Can we give Daniel all for the praise?
I want to ask you, just give me just this 1 second. Daniel, will you tell us, what do you do for a living? And that's what I was trying to figure out. I know you work in the medical field, but.
I've been a registered nurse for 12 years.
Wow.
I'm clinical director of nursing administration at St. Patrick's Hospital.
Oh, wow. Amen. Amen. I I enjoyed that presentation because not only was there a lot of information, but the way he presented it, you know, it was it made it, I think it made us not be afraid of asking questions. A lot of times when you deal with somebody, people in the medical field make you afraid to ask questions, you know. But I thank God for the vigorous and healthy conversation and the questions that were asked. I think we were all better by that. Amen? Let us all stand. Yeah, we want to invite you all out to our Men's Day on tomorrow at 11 a.m. Sunday school, 9:30. Lord, we tell you thank you for this men and boys breakfast, God. We tell you thank you, oh God, for the food that was prepared, the hands that prepared it, oh God, those who so often work behind the scenes, oh God. And then, Lord God, we just tell you thank you for the conversation that we had today, oh God. It was a challenging conversation. It was a spiritual conversation, oh God. Even though we were talking about our physical bodies, oh God, because Paul said that our bodies are the temple of the Lord, oh God. And we want to make sure that we are taking care of our temples, oh God, in Jesus' name. Now, Lord God, as we leave this place, bless every man here, oh God. Touch us, oh God. Be with us, oh God. In Jesus' name we pray. All my Heavenly Father's children said amen. Amen. Amen.
Joe.
Thank you, guys.
Rehearse.